The Nintendo Switch 2 is home to some of the most gripping survival games ever made, and these 25 titles prove the platform is a serious destination for fans of the genre. Starting this list at number 1, Subnautica is an underwater survival game that drops you into a living alien ocean after your spaceship crashes on an unknown planet. You gather resources, craft tools, and build an expanding sea base while exploring biomes that range from glowing kelp forests to pitch-black trenches hiding Leviathan-class creatures. The progression system is naturally paced, pulling you deeper into the ocean as you unlock new vehicles like the Sea Moth and Cyclops to reach previously inaccessible zones. The atmosphere is the game's greatest strength, blending genuine wonder with a constant undercurrent of dread that makes every dive feel meaningful. On Nintendo Switch 2, the game runs as a native release, offering a significant upgrade over the original Switch version with better performance and visuals. Coming in at number 2, Minecraft remains the definitive sandbox survival experience and one of the most played games in history, regardless of platform. The loop is simple on the surface, but endlessly expandable, starting with basic wood tools and escalating into automated farms, functioning redstone computers, and fully custom worlds built block by block. Switch 2 players get the full Java-adjacent feature set with crossplay support, making it easy to connect with friends on other platforms without hassle. Whether you play purely in survival mode, creative mode, or a mix of both, Minecraft offers a depth of content that no other game on this list can realistically match in terms of pure hours of engagement. It is the game that defined an entire generation of survival crafting titles and continues to influence everything released in its wake. Number 3 belongs to Green Hell, one of the most demanding and realistic survival experiences available on any Nintendo console. The game places you in the Amazon rainforest with nothing and asks you to manage not just hunger, thirst, and shelter, but individual injuries per body part, parasites, fungal infections, and sanity. Every wound requires a specific treatment, and ignoring even a minor cut can spiral into a serious medical crisis within minutes. The crafting system is detailed and grounded, rewarding players who pay attention to their environment and learn the purpose of every plant and material around them. The setting is stunning but lethal, and the game respects you enough to never hold your hand through any of it. For players looking for a hardcore and immersive survival experience on Switch 2, Green Hell is genuinely unmatched. At number 4, Don't Starve Together takes the brutal gothic survival of the original and adds cooperative chaos with full multiplayer support for up to 6 players. The art style is hand-drawn and immediately recognizable, with a dark fairy tale aesthetic that suits the game's unforgiving tone perfectly. You must manage hunger, health, and sanity simultaneously, while surviving seasonal changes that introduce new threats like the deerclops in winter and hound attacks that escalate over time. No 2 runs are the same thanks to a procedurally generated world that shuffles resources, biomes, and events differently every session. The cooperative dynamic adds a fascinating layer where team coordination becomes just as important as individual survival skill, and failing together often ends up more entertaining than surviving alone. Landing at number 5, Terraria is a 2D sandbox survival game that rewards exploration and creativity in equal measure. The world is generated randomly and filled with dozens of distinct biomes, each hiding unique resources, enemies, and boss encounters that define your progression through the game. Combat is fast and reactive, requiring you to build appropriate arenas and gear for each of the game's many boss fights, which scales significantly in difficulty as you progress into hard mode. The building system is surprisingly deep, supporting everything from simple shelters to elaborate pixel art structures and fully functional NPC housing layouts. Terraria has received consistent free updates over its life, meaning the version playable on Switch 2 is the most content-rich release in the game's history. It is one of the clearest examples of a game that can be completed or played endlessly, depending entirely on how you approach it. Number 6 is Valheim, the Viking survival experience that blends Norse mythology with one of the most satisfying base building systems in the genre. You are a slain warrior placed in purgatory and tasked with defeating 5 ancient bosses, each gaining access to new biomes and crafting materials that expand your capabilities. The progression feels organic, with each new zone dramatically raising the stakes in terms of environmental threats and enemy difficulty. The architectural base building system uses structural integrity mechanics, meaning you can't simply stack blocks randomly and must think carefully about how your structures are supported. Multiplayer supports up to 10 players, and the cooperative dynamic changes the game significantly, allowing groups to specialize across building, crafting, and combat roles. On Switch 2, Valheim delivers the full experience in a portable format that makes the game feel fresh all over again. At number 7, The Long Dark is a first-person survival simulation set in the frozen Canadian wilderness, following a geomagnetic disaster that has knocked out all technology. The game tracks temperature, calories, hydration, fatigue, and condition with precise attention to detail, making every decision carry genuine weight in your survival odds. The environment is the primary antagonist, with blizzards that reduce visibility to 0, wolves that stalk you through the trees, and nights that top to temperatures lethal within minutes without proper shelter and clothing. Wintermute Story Mode offers a structured narrative path for players who want guidance, while Survival Mode drops you in with nothing and lets the wilderness define your limits. The atmosphere is unlike anything else on this list, trading monsters and combat for quiet, tension-filled resource management that hits harder than any jump scare. Number 8 is Grounded, Obsidian Entertainment's insect and scale survival game that shrinks you to the size of an ant and drops you in a suburban backyard full of enormous and hostile creatures. The premise sounds simple, but the execution is layered, with a detailed base building system, a deep crafting progression tied to analyzing collected materials, and a narrative mystery that unfolds gradually as you explore the yard. Different insects and bugs require different combat approaches and drop specific resources, encouraging you to engage with every part of the environment rather than avoid anything dangerous. The cooperative multiplayer supports up to 4 players, and the game is arguably best experienced as a team effort, where each player can specialize in exploration, building, or combat. On Switch 2, the game runs smoothly, and the visual detail of the oversized backyard environment looks impressive in both docked and handheld mode. At number 9, Astroneer is a space exploration survival game built around terraforming alien planets and constructing increasingly complex space systems using a unique soil manipulation tool. The game's visual design is deliberately colorful and stylized, creating a sense of wonder during exploration that contrasts pleasantly with the resource pressure of survival. You collect materials by shaping the terrain directly, filling your backpack, and then returning to base to feed raw resources into printers that produce new modules and vehicles. Each planet in the solar system has a distinct surface, atmosphere, and set of resources, rewarding thorough exploration and encouraging you to set up outposts across multiple worlds. The cooperative multiplayer supports up to 4 players, making Astroneer an excellent choice for groups who prefer a more relaxed and creative survival experience, without the oppressive threat level of some other entries on this list. Number 10 goes to Subnautica Below Zero, the standalone sequel that takes the alien ocean formula of the original and shifts the setting to an Arctic environment with a smaller, more focused map and a stronger narrative backbone. The story is more character-driven this time, with voice dialogue and a clearer emotional thread connecting the exploration and survival loops. New biomes, including underwater caves filled with geothermal vents and frozen surface areas, add variety to the exploration experience. And new tools like the Sea Truck modular submarine replace the Clysops from the first game with something more flexible. The game is somewhat shorter and less overwhelming than the original Subnautica, which actually makes it a more approachable starting point for players new to the franchise. On Switch 2, it runs natively as a free upgrade for existing Switch owners, and holds up well against its predecessor in terms of atmosphere and pacing. At number 11, This War of Mine Complete Edition approaches survival from a perspective almost no other game on this list attempts, placing you in the shoes of civilians trying to survive in a besieged city, rather than soldiers fighting through it. The game uses a day and night cycle to structure resource gathering and scavenging runs, with daytime spent managing your shelter and survivors, and nighttime used to sneak through ruined buildings looking for supplies and medicine. Every survivor has unique skills and emotional states that deteriorate under stress and trauma, and the moral decisions you make during scavenging runs have lasting consequences on your group's mental health and cohesion. The war setting removes the fantasy abstraction of most survival games and replaces it with something far more sobering and grounded in real human cost. It is one of the most important games ever made in the genre for what it chooses to say about survival beyond just the mechanical loop. Number 12 features Raft, an ocean survival game that starts you on a single wooden plank in the middle of an endless sea, with nothing but a hook to collect debris floating past. You build and expand your raft gradually, using scavenged materials, adding crafting stations, a water purifier, a grill for cooking, and eventually sails and an engine to navigate toward radio signal destinations. The story mode connects a series of discovered islands through research notes and environmental storytelling, giving casual players a reason to progress beyond raw survival. A great white shark circles your raft constantly, attacking your floor supports if you expand carelessly, and requiring defense structures to manage. Cooperative play for up to 4 players makes Raft one of the most enjoyable and relaxed multiplayer survival experiences available, with a low enough difficulty ceiling that it works well for mixed experience groups. At number 13, Core Keeper is a top-down mining survival game released in 2024 that already has an active community and expanding content base. You awaken underground near an ancient core and must explore procedurally generated caverns, gather resources, build a base, and defeat bosses to power the core and uncover the mystery of your surroundings. The farming system lets you grow crops inside your base, and the cooking system adds a meaningful food variety layer that rewards exploring different biomes for new ingredients. The progression is gated by boss encounters that each introduce new biomes and resource tiers, giving the game clear milestones even without a formal quest structure. Cooperative multiplayer supports up to 8 players, making Core Keeper one of the most generous multiplayer survival options on the platform. It draws clear inspiration from Terraria and Stardew Valley, but builds its own identity through its underground setting and deliberate pacing. Number 14 goes to Dysmantle, a post-apocalyptic survival RPG that lets you destroy almost every object in the world to salvage materials for crafting and progression. The game world is an open island filled with ruins, overgrown towns, and roaming enemies, all of which you systematically dismantle using a rotating set of tools and upgraded equipment. The combat is real-time and approachable, making it accessible to players who prefer survival crafting over action gameplay without being completely passive. The upgrade tree ties directly into your ability to break down more resistant materials, creating a natural sense of progression tied to environmental destruction rather than abstract leveling. The tone is relaxed despite the apocalyptic setting, leaning toward exploration and discovery over tension and threat. It is a hidden gem in the survival genre that rewards patient players who enjoy systematic world exploration. At number 15, Breathedge is a space survival game presented as a dark comedy, placing you in a debris field after a catastrophic spaceship funeral convoy disaster, with nothing but a smart-mouthed AI companion and the wreckage around you. The crafting and oxygen management mechanics are solid and form a tight survival loop, but the game's real distinction is its absurdist humor woven into every item description, environmental detail, and story beat. Building an oxygen supply chain through the vacuum of space feels satisfying and gradually opens access to new areas of the debris field, where more answers about the disaster's cause are hidden. The game does not take itself seriously, which makes it a refreshing contrast to the grimmer tone of most survival games on this list. It is a smart, polished experience that delivers both genuine mechanical depth and consistent entertainment through its comedic voice. Number 16 is Miasmata, a first-person survival game set on a deserted island overrun with plague, casting you as a scientist attempting to synthesize a cure using plant samples collected from across the island. Navigation relies on triangulation using landmarks on a hand-drawn map, rather than a modern minimap, making exploration feel genuinely uncertain and rewarding when you successfully orient yourself in unfamiliar terrain. The creature that stalks the island uses scent and sound to track you, forcing careful movement and deliberate path planning to avoid confrontation you cannot win directly. The crafting system is built around scientific research rather than resource grinding, with plant compounds combined in specific ways to create medicines that manage your illness and keep you mobile. It is one of the most atmospheric and mechanically distinct survival games available, representing a corner of the genre rarely explored by other developers. At number 17, Spiritfarer reframes the survival genre through a lens of grief and caretaking, putting you in the role of a ferryman who tends to spirits aboard a customizable boat before guiding them to the afterlife. The farming, cooking, crafting, and base building systems are all present and functional, but they serve an emotional narrative rather than a threat-based survival loop. Each spirit passenger has a unique personality, backstory, and set of needs that you fulfill through exploration, gathering, and conversation across a beautifully illustrated 2D world. The game is deliberately gentle and emotionally intelligent, designed to process themes of loss and letting go through the language of survival and management gameplay. It is not a traditional survival game, but earns its place on this list as one of the most meaningful experiences available on Switch 2, using the genre's core mechanics. Number 18 is Hades 2, the follow-up to Supergiant's acclaimed roguelike that builds on everything its predecessor established, with new characters, a deeper narrative, expanded biomes, and refined combat systems. You play as Melinoe, a witch and daughter of Hades, fighting through the underworld against the Titan Kronos, using an expanded set of weapons and ability boons. The survival roguelike format means each run ends in either triumph or death, with persistent upgrades gradually improving your odds across multiple attempts. The storytelling is delivered entirely through repeated character interactions that evolve with every run, rewarding players who invest in the world and its characters over time. On Switch 2, the game runs beautifully, with the tight, responsive combat the series demands, and the wealth of content added through post-launch updates makes it one of the most complete packages available on the platform. At number 19, Dave the Diver blends survival diving gameplay with restaurant management in a combination that sounds chaotic but works with surprising elegance. During the day, you dive into a living underwater biome to catch fish and gather ingredients, managing oxygen and equipment durability while avoiding dangerous sea creatures in the depths. At night, you run a sushi restaurant using the catches from your dives, handling customer orders, hiring staff, and researching new menu items to expand the operation. The game has an enormous amount of content packed into its runtime, including story chapters, side missions, mini-games, and a cast of memorable characters that give the experience real personality. The tone is warm and playful throughout, making Dave the Diver one of the most approachable and genuinely enjoyable entries on this entire list, regardless of how familiar you are with survival games.